You're here under oath, and yet we have lie after lie after lie after lie.
This is SportsCenter.
Does not mean that he was not mistaken,
Excuse
sir.
me, but this is not your time to argue with me.
Roger Clemens and Brian McNamee face off in front of Congress, but which of the two is lying under oath?
I injected him on numerous occasions with steroids and human growth hormone.
Let me be clear. I have never taken steroids or HGH.
Richard Zednick's recovery continues while his teammates return to action hosting the slumping Habs. Bouncing back on the road, the Senators shoot for some consistency against Martin Brodeur and the Devils. 7 points behind the Sabres, Toronto's birthday boy looks to lead the Leafs to a big win in Buffalo. Plus, Raps coach Jay Triano makes NBA history, facing a Nets team on the verge of trading Jason Kidd. Good evening, everybody. How are you? Welcome to SportsCenter. He's Darren Detition. I'm Jennifer Hedger, and an interesting day in Washington. Brian McNamee, Roger Clemens both shared a witness table. That was about the only thing they shared today as they told their side of the story.
Yeah, and differing sides indeed. It really was compelling television today. Today in Washington, Roger Clemens stood before a congressional committee and vehemently denied that he had ever used steroids or human growth hormone. But rather than unequivocally clear his name, he clouded it even more. His testimony and timelines not only contradicted his main accuser, Brian McNamee, whose credibility was also called into question, but his good friend Andy Pettit as well. Brent Wallace has more from Washington.
Someone's lying in spectacular fashion about the ultimate question.
And someone is still lying, despite swearing under oath to tell the truth. The two witnesses and their diametrically opposed stories brought together at the same table. Roger Clemens and his former trainer Brian McNamee took their shots from the committee members as they continued to stand by their stories. Clemens was unrelenting in his refusal that he took steroids and HGH from Brian McNamee. In his opening statement, the seven-time Cy Young winner was steadfast in his denial.
I've been accused of something I'm not guilty of. How do you prove a negative? No matter what we discuss here today, I'm never going to have my name restored. But I've got to try and set the record straight.
Brian McNamee, who says he injected Clemens upwards of 20 times with performance-enhancing drugs, tried to show remorse for what he had done.
I'm not proud of what I've done, and I'm not proud to testify against the man I once admired. And let me be clear, despite Roger Clemens' statements to the contrary, I never injected Roger Clemens or anyone else with lidocaine or B12. I have no reason to lie and every reason not to. If I do lie, I will be prosecuted.
As they took questions from the 40-member committee, the two former friends sat just feet away at the same table, never once looking at each other. They were focused on the committee that didn't take long to start grilling the witnesses.
You know, I'm not going to read any more of this. This is really disgusting. You're here as a sworn witness. You're here to tell the truth. You're here under oath, and yet we have lie after lie after lie after lie, where you've told this committee and the people of this country that Roger Clemens did things that I don't know what to believe. I know one thing I don't believe, and that's you.
Clemens had his own damaging issues to deal with. The 45-year-old was taken to task on two big topics. One was the testimony of Andy Pettit. Clemens' former friend and teammate said in his own deposition that the two men discussed human growth hormone. Pettit's wife, Laura, who was also questioned last week, backed up her husband's testimony. Clemens, however, didn't back down.
Now, Mr. Clemens, you know Mr. Pettit well. You just, again, described your relationship. You described him as a close friend in your deposition. Would he tell the Congress that one of his close friends was taking an illegal performance-enhancing drug if there were any doubt in his mind about the truth of what he was saying?
Mr. Congressman, once again, I believe in my... I'm sorry?
Now, I just want you to just go ahead and answer that. Do you think he would do that?
I think he misremembers.
It's hard to believe you, sir. I hate to say that as you're one of my heroes, but it's hard to believe you.
Clemens was also taken to task over what appeared to be witness tampering in regards to a former nanny that could allegedly place the picture at a party at Jose Canseco's house. Clemens contacted the nanny himself.
Was it your idea to meet with her before forwarding her name to us, or did someone suggest that to you?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that just like through this whole hearings, I was doing y'all a favor by finding a nanny that was supposedly came in question.
Well, you might have been trying to do us a favor, but who told you should invite her to your house that you haven't seen her in all those years?
Chairman, this is unfair. What his lawyers tell him is unfair to me.
Okay, well, I accept that. I accept that. I accept that. Well, gentlemen, please be seated. Was it your idea? That's the appropriate. Was it your idea?
It was my idea to investigate what witnesses know.
Okay.
Just like any other lawyer in the free world.
Right to the end of the day, the Rocket defended himself. With the game all but over, Clemens was still throwing.
Each member, and perhaps everyone in the audience that watches this hearing, will reach his or her own conclusion. But this is what I think we've learned. Chuck Knobloch and Andy Pettit confirmed what Brian McNamee told Senator Mitchell. We learned of conversations that Andy Pettit believed he had with Roger Clemens about HGH. And even though Mr. Clemens says his relationship with Mr. Pettit was so close that they would know and share information with each other, evidently Mr. Pettit didn't believe what Mr. Clemens said in that 2005 conversation.
Doesn't mean he was not mistaken, sir.
Doesn't mean that, but
it does not mean that he was not mistaken, sir.
Excuse me, but this is not your time to argue with me.
While this hearing had plenty of great TV moments, it never got the answer it was looking for. The only thing to come out of Wednesday was the fact they now have both Brian McNamee and Roger Clemens making their statements under oath. And if it's ever proven later on that either one lied about Clemens' alleged use of performance-enhancing drugs, then possible perjury charges and jail time could follow. Brent Wallace, TSN, Washington.
It's clear they will launch an investigation into whether or not they can prove not McNamee is lying, but whether or not Clemens is lying. That will rest upon whether they can come up with other corroborating evidence other than Brian McNamee. Brian McNamee's words is not going to get anybody convicted. Andy Pettit is a problem for Roger Clemens. His defense is he misunderstood the conversation. The conversation took place 7 or 8 years ago, as I recall, and the fact that Andy Pettit's wife corroborates what Andy tells him, that really doesn't add very much. So I think as it stands right now, there's an investigation, and although I'll now use the cliche about the grand jury indicting a ham sandwich, I think that any prosecutor, it would be hard-pressed to go ahead just based on the evidence we have now.